So it really is an honor to be here. Thank you to General Little and all the military leadership. I really appreciate y'all being here. Thank you to Frank for inviting me to do this. When I came out to visit several months ago, I could tell there was really something special about the team out here. We had a great time. Everyone we met was amazing and inspiring. So I couldn't turn up the opportunity to come here in person and talk to all of you. And then finally, thanks to Josie for just being the person that sets this all up and runs all over the place in her high heels, which is incredibly impressive, and just making this all happen. So thank you to you. Next slide, please. So this is my disclaimer. In case I say anything crazy today, I'm speaking only on behalf of myself and not the Air Force or the Department of Energy or the Department of Defense, just me. Okay, next slide. So before I get into the meat of what I want to say, I want to explain what it is that I am. And you heard my duty title, Principal Assistant and Deputy Administrator for Military Application, the longest duty title I've ever had in my life. They abbreviate it by calling me the PADAMA. My kids call me the PADAMA, which I think is hilarious. So what is that? I am that one person at the Department of Energy in the National Nuclear Security Administration who speaks both languages and who has kind of a foot in both worlds, the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense. So I'm that one star who kind of lives in both. I'm a glorified liaison. So as you can imagine, the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy have completely different languages, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that in the work that you do. They have different languages, they have different ways of doing budgeting, they have different different ways they do acquisitions of equipment and things, different ways they build buildings, different office symbols, everything is different. And I'm that person that knows the players on both sides, knows the languages on both sides. So that way, when the DoD says, why aren't you getting me this weapon quicker? Or why is it having all these problems? And they're angry, they know to poke at me and I will help calm them and get them the answers they need. And then vice versa. When my old boss used to say, what's wrong with the Air Force? Why can't you fix them? So I'm the person who would also talk to the DOE and the National Nuclear Security Administration about what's going on the DoD side, why they say the things they do, why different leaders act the way they act, why they have the things that they focus in on, what their concerns are. So I live in both those worlds. This slide just kind of explains how we work together in DoD and DOE. We work together through what's called the Nuclear Weapons Council. And that is chaired by, the members are the administrator for the NNSA, the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the commander of STRATCOM. So it is this very high-ranking body that arbitrates those decisions that affect both departments. So when the DoD says, I want a weapon for this platform, I want it by this time, I want this many, I want it to be able to survive in these types of environments, the DOE will say, okay, we can do that, or we can do it, but it'll take longer than you want, or we can do it, but then we can't do this other program. Well, this is the agency that works those decisions and then codifies them, the Nuclear Weapons Council. So in the DC area, we have 5 Air Force 1 stars who work nuclear business, and I am one of those 1 stars. We also have one at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, which I know a lot of you are familiar with. We have one on the Joint Staff, one on the Air Staff, and then one on the National Security Council staff. So those are your 5 Air Force 1 stars in the DC area doing nuke stuff. And again, one of them is me. Good so far? Okay, now we'll get into the more fun stuff. Next slide, please. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is tell you my personal story. And I'm not telling you my story because I think it's all that interesting or meaningful, but I'm doing it more to model what I think we all should do as great teammates and as leaders. And if you don't consider yourself a leader, you're wrong. You are all leaders in this room. So one of the things I encourage people to do is share your personal story with the people you work with, the people who work for you, share it with your boss and supervisor, Because when you do that, it builds trust. It makes you vulnerable, which builds trust. And when you do that, then your people will share their stories with you. They'll also be more likely to share their problems with you, their concerns with you. When something is wrong, no matter how minor, they'll share it with you because you have broken down those barriers and shared your personal self with them. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is tell you my story. So I grew up in northern Indiana, just farm country. Both of my parents were born and raised Amish. So I'll run up here to the screen. This little Amish girl here, and the same one there holding one of her siblings, that's my mom. My mom was one of 17 children. Yeah, grandma had a lot of kids. One of 17 children, numbers 16 and 17 were twins, and they weighed over 11 pounds each. I know, which is crazy. They probably just like fell out. So yeah, mom was one of 17 kids. My dad was also Amish. He was one of 7 kids, so a little bit more conservative. My dad, what we call switched over. My dad switched over to English when he was 13, and my mom was a little bit more traditional. She switched over to English when she was 18. But coming from an Amish family, I still have a lot of Amish relatives. My oldest aunt stayed Amish. She had a ton of kids. They all stayed Amish. So we still have lots of Amish relatives in my family. I have over 100 first cousins. I don't know most of them, as you can imagine. So if you're not familiar with the Amish, you know, it's very traditional horse and buggy, no electricity. They work incredibly hard. So that's how I was raised, that you work hard. My family was always in the restaurant business. First, my aunt had a restaurant that we all worked in, and then my own parents got a restaurant that I grew up in. So I always started out as the dishwasher. I was the kitchen cook. I was the grill cook. One year I was the handyman. I finally graduated to waitress, which is how I made money during the summers. But that's how I was raised. That's how my family worked. My parents didn't go to college. Most of my aunts and uncles didn't go to college, but for some reason I always knew I was going to go to college. I don't know why I knew that. I just knew I was. So I went to college. I got a bachelor's degree in psychology. And then my senior year, I was a pre-med student. Obviously, I did not go to med school. My mom is still disappointed. You know, I'm like, Mom, I'm a general. She's like, oh, you're supposed to be a doctor. Yeah, your parents keep you humble, right? So I went to college, psychology major, pre-med, graduated. I was working in a hospital. In the laboratory, trying to get into medical schools. My husband and I had been married about 6 months. I was working a lot of overtime. I wasn't making very much money. And I had a friend who was in the Air Force. And he literally just read me his pay stub. And he was making twice as much money as I was making, working my butt off in this hospital. And so, unbeknownst to my husband, I marched down to the recruiter. And at that time, I was a female with a degree. So it was very easy for me to get into the Air Force. So they accepted me in. I came home and told my husband, I'm joining the Air Force. And he was like, you're what? Because that was nowhere in any of our plans. But off I went. I was going to do 4 years, get direction in life like a lot of young people do, you know, figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up and get out. But 4 years came. And I realized I loved the mission of the Air Force, but I loved the people of the Air Force even more. And you all know it's the people you get to work with and lead who make all the difference in the world. And so the reason I've stayed all of these years is for the people. And as I've moved up in rank, I get to take care of more and more people. And that is my why now. My why used to be doing the mission, it was being an instructor, it was operating satellites, you know, it was being ready to launch missiles if I had to, but now it's taking care of all those amazing airmen and civilians. And as I've moved into different worlds, I also take care of sailors, soldiers, you name it, guardians now, who do all the amazing missions that our country needs them to. So that's why I've stayed. I've been married almost 28 years. I've been in the Air Force 27 years. I have a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. We've moved 13 times, which is a lot. My kids have moved a lot of times. Cats, dogs, lizards, frogs, chickens, you name it, we've had it. And it's been a great life. Before I move on from this story, the one thing I do want to mention is my spouse. I know I'm very, very lucky that my spouse has been willing to move. He doesn't mind moving. He enjoys moving. He grows his resume at some of the jobs. Some of the jobs that I've had where I've been busier or it's been a lot of travel, he'll be a stay-at-home dad, and he's amazing at it. He braids hair way better than I do. The kids always ask him to braid their hair, and it makes me feel bad. But I know I'm lucky. We have a lot of people that we work with and that work with us that are single parents, that are trying to take care of aging parents of their own, or who are married to spouses who have incredibly important jobs that they want to invest in. We have people who live in communities where nobody in the town looks like them. So I know that we have a lot of people who are not as fortunate as me. And I know I'm very lucky. And I try and keep that in mind. And I try and remind people, other leaders, that we need to keep in mind the struggles that all the people we work with are possibly having because of their own family dynamics and their family situations. So again, the point of telling you my story is to remind you to share your story. You don't have to be as detailed as I was, but share your story with people, again, because it builds trust. And in our community and the critical work that we all do, it's important to build trust locally and then broadly as well. All right, next slide, please. So when I first joined the military, I had this vision of what success looked like. And it looked very stoic. It was very angry. I had this, this is what a military leader is, and this is how they move up, and these are all the check boxes that they need to get through, and this is what their family should look like. I just had this vision. And I've met a lot of people who have a vision of what it looks like to succeed in whatever their career path is. But trying to meet the requirements of that vision for me was exhausting. And it took me a long time to realize that. So now I have different principles that guide me. And it doesn't look like marching up this ladder to success. It looks very different from that. So I'm going to go through what I now carry as my leadership principles. And obviously, I'm not telling you these should be yours. I'm just saying these are what have helped me get through the career that I've done and still have, my sanity somewhat intact. So next slide, please. The first one is authenticity. I had a friend who surprised me a few years ago because he told me he had pictures of me in a briefing that he gave to young people, and it was these pictures, and I was horrified. But I've adopted this. So the picture on the left is from 2015. That's when I first became a colonel, and I had to have my official photo taken. And I thought I knew what a colonel was supposed to look like. So that's what I thought. I was supposed to be, really stern and cool and commanding. So I took that picture. And about a year into the assignment, a lady came up to me and she told me she hated that picture because, of course, it hung in the hallway, it hung in people's offices. And she's like, I hate that picture of you. And I was like, oh my God. She's like, you smile all the time. That doesn't even look like you. And I was like, ooh, you're right. So the next time I had to take an official photo, I was like, we're going to take it how I always look, whether the photographer wanted me to do it that way or not, because if you haven't done this, they're very picky about their official photos. General Little probably knows what I'm talking about. So I took it smiling. And so that is now the picture that I use. Well, I've gained rank since then, but I smile in my pictures. When I first joined the Air Force and I was going through officer training school, one of the first criticisms that was given to me was, you can't cry. And then as I've moved on, it was, you can't be emotional. You can't share your emotions, except anger. Anger was always okay, which is frightening, but nothing else. You shouldn't be overly happy. You shouldn't be excited. Obviously you shouldn't cry. So I lived that way for well over 10 years of my career. And around 15 years ago, something in me changed. And I don't know if it was just a matter of maturing, if it was because I had experienced a lot of losses during that time period, if it was because I had my first kid during that time period. I don't know what it was, but something in me changed and I decided I can't do this anymore. I cannot not be me anymore. So I'm going to be me all the time. And if the Air Force decides they don't want me anymore because of that, that's great. I was only going to stay 4 years. I'll pack up my stuff and I'll go. So I decided I was going to be me. And from then on, I have warned people. So when I go to a new job, one of the first things I do is I warn the people I work with. I'm going to cry when something terrible happens. I'm going to rejoice when something amazing happens. When you have a baby, I'm going to be hugging, weeping. When your mom dies, I'm going to be weeping. When you win an award, I'm going to be jumping up and down and hugging you. Some days I'm going to have really bad days because my kid was a jerk and I'm going to come in grumpy. Some days I'm going to be super excited. Some days I'm going to have too much coffee. I just warn people, like, you are getting me. I'm going to hug you so long, it's going to be awkward. That is what you're getting. And they haven't kicked me out yet. I think the military has come a long way, and I know that a lot of you have had sessions in here where you've talked about emotional intelligence and authenticity and things like this. We're coming a long way. The military is realizing the value of that a lot more than it used to. Back in the day, we used to have Air Force doctrine, and I'm talking like when the Air Force first stood up. It had a lot of words in it, like love and compassion and trust and belonging. And over the years, those words have left that document. Well, the Air Force is now getting to a point where they're bringing those words back, as are a lot of the services. They're realizing the value of being yourself and making sure people know they can be themselves and that they will be valued and have a sense of belonging and trust in each other and trust in their leaders. So now I strive very hard every day to be my authentic self. Because like I said, it was very tiring and painful not to be. And since I've become my authentic self at work, it feels a lot freer. I feel closer to the people I work with. And I feel like they feel closer to me and they share things with me that they wouldn't have otherwise. And it helps me better care for them because they do that. Next slide, please. So another lesson I learned that took me a while to learn was to find joy. Early on in my career, I had an opportunity to go be an instructor. And all the other people who had gone before me to take this instructor position ended up getting out of the Air Force right when they were done. So when I volunteered for this job, all my leadership told me, don't do it. It's going to be the end of your career. It's a career killer. And I was like, oh, but it sounds like fun, because I was very young. I was like, oh, it sounds like fun. I'm going to go do it anyways. So I went and did it, and I was an instructor for 3 years, and it was the funnest 3 years of my career. We had a great team. We taught a lot of students. We did a lot of volunteer activities in the community with like Special Olympics. We just had a blast for 3 years, and my leadership took care of me, and I went on and I continued. And that happened 2 more times in my career. 2 more times I volunteered for a job and people told me, don't do it. It's going to be the end of your career. And I said, yeah, but it sounds like fun. It sounds like something I would love to do. It sounds like something I would be good at. So I'm going to do it anyways. And I think when you go and do those things that you're passionate about, you do them better. And people like to watch you do them because you do them with joy and passion and inspiration. And maybe I'm naive, but I think when our supervisors and leaders see us doing our jobs with joy and passion, then they take care of you. They reward you, whether it's with promotions or increased responsibilities or, I don't know, a piece of certificate or something. They reward you when you do those things. But that doesn't really matter. The main thing is you found joy in what you're doing. So now I seek out to the best that I can. I seek out those opportunities that give me joy. Like coming here, my boss didn't ask me to come here. I told my boss I'm coming here. Because this talking to all of you, seeing you nod or smile or maybe leaving you with one nugget, that gives me joy. That fills my cup for probably weeks. So I seek out those things, those jobs, those opportunities, those volunteer things I can do that give me joy. And I just, at this point, have faith that if I do that, if my leaders see me enjoying my work, see me leading passionately, then they'll take care of me. And again, if they don't, that's okay. I had a great run. So I encourage you, I know sometimes we get drugged down in the day-to-day grind of our jobs. I encourage you in whatever ways you can, whether it's a volunteer thing in the community or here on the installation, or if it's a job you can pursue, to look for those things that you think will provide you fulfillment and joy. Next slide, please. And finally, grace. I tend to get emotional during this one, so I'll try not to. A lot of people in the military members know this, a lot of leaders, you all know this and experience this. You think you have to do everything and you think you have to be everything to everyone. I worked really hard in my career for a lot of years before I had kids. And then when I had kids, I thought I had to find, that work-life balance. I hate the phrase work-life balance. It makes me want to puke when I hear it. But I thought I needed to have work-life balance. I had to be a great mom, a great spouse, a great leader, a great worker at work. And again, I know I keep saying exhausting, but that was exhausting. And I would say it all kind of came to a head when I had my youngest. So my youngest is Joey. She's 13 years old now. She's taller than me, stunning, smart. I mean, she's everything I'm not. She's smart, she's funny, she's athletic, she's gorgeous. But Joey was born at only 25 weeks. So y'all know how long babies are supposed to stay in there. They're supposed to stay in there for 40 weeks. She was born at 25 weeks, so she only weighed 1 pound, 12 ounces. At the time, I was a major. I was doing nuclear targeting at United States Strategic Command. It's not like it's something you just can't do. You have to do it. So I was doing nuclear targeting. I had this baby who was born super early. She was staying in the NICU. And I was worried about what are my coworkers gonna think of me. I had this baby. She's staying in the hospital. Just 2 days later, I came back to work, which looking back, if I could slap myself, I would. Like, that's insane. But I went back to work because I didn't want to let my team down. But I would go every morning to visit her. I would go every lunch to visit her. I would leave work early sometimes to visit her. And I had a toddler at home at the same time. I had a spouse. It was crazy. But I was worried. What are my friends going to think of me that I work with? I'm not pulling my weight. They were the most gracious, understanding teammates. And I was the only woman. They were all men. So that was another thing I thought they're not going to understand. They totally understood because they were all dads. They got it. And they also understood because leading up to that point, they knew I was a hard worker and they knew I would do anything for them. So when I had to leave work early and miss hours and hours every day or leave at lunch for 2 hours, they did not care one bit. And then my boss, when she was finally released from the hospital, instead of taking maternity leave when I should have, he's like, you didn't take it, so you're going to take it when she comes home. So he gave me all that maternity leave, which he didn't have to do when she came home, so I could be with her. And that's when I learned not only was it okay if I took care of myself and my personal life, and that my coworkers and my leadership would understand, it would also set an example for those who are watching me. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. But it also set an example for those who are watching me. And it was okay. And I learned to ask for help. Finally, after all those years, I learned that it was okay to ask for help. So that's something I've carried with me into all the leadership positions I've had since then. I ask for help. You ask for help. We have a lot of mental health problems right now in the military because there's a stigma against seeking and getting help. And I think this is one of those things that helps me set the tone for people to do exactly that. Ask for help, take care of yourself, take care of your personal business, take care of your family, be there for them. And you all have heard it, you know, when your careers are done, your family is what you want left. You want them to still be there. So I've tried to share this story with a lot of people just because it took this, which is too bad, it took this for me to realize to give myself some grace, to give myself permission to not be everything to everybody at all times, to not strive for work-life balance. There are days when I'm an awesome mom, like I met the kids for lunch at school, or I left early to go to a choir concert, but then I missed some things at work. And then there's days where I kick ass at work, but my family hasn't seen me, you know, for a couple weeks. But in the grand scheme, I try to make sure that it balances out. And I communicate and I explain to my children a lot. This is why I'm going here. This is why it's important. This is who I'm going to talk to. This is who I'm going to help. This is who I'm going to advocate for. So that way they understand. And then I share the story of my family with people that I meet. So again, I am very, very touched and humbled that I got to spend time with you, with folks who are watching virtually. This is very vulnerable for me. So I know I told you need a model being vulnerable. This is very vulnerable for me. I'm very uncomfortable talking about myself. I'd rather tell you, you know, the command brief of defense programs or something like that. It's easier to get through. But I hope that, you know, if anything, maybe you remember a way that you felt, or if you remember, you know, in a key moment a few weeks from now, like, oh, I should be myself in this situation, or I should tell my teammate, you know, why I'm upset today, you know, or I should hug somebody or high five somebody because something amazing happened. Maybe one of those things will stick with you. So again, I appreciate you all listening and inviting me here, and I'm sweating profusely because I'm still super nervous. But I really appreciate it, and I thank you all, and I look forward to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Hands? Questions? Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. You were with the ICBMs, I understand.
I can hear you.
Recently, planes were that were in the ICBM, most of the Air Force, kind of like left behind, they felt left behind, the technologies, old, felt like it. The rest of us need to communicate with the threat statement. Is that attitude?
Awesome. So the question was, with the end of the Cold War, I'm not sure how old you think I am. But with the end of the Cold War, you know, what is the state of affairs with ICBMs? How do people feel? You know, it kind of felt like they were left behind. How is it going now? So first thing I'll say is across the nuclear enterprise, we kind of stopped doing work. There was a period from 1997 to 2009 where we did not make a nuclear weapon. So that was over a decade of not exercising human beings, infrastructure, processes, equipment, like things are literally rusted in place. And now with, rising threats from Russia, China, North Korea, just like you all have seen, we are restarting this enterprise. But it took decades for it to fall into disrepair, and now it's taking decades to build it back up again. So we have human beings who are trying to restart machines who didn't even know how that machine operated when it was operating. They're trying to restart it. They're trying to figure out formulas for things that were never written down, that were in some dude's head. They're restarting all of this stuff. So it's on the backs of amazing, dedicated human beings that we're restarting this enterprise. So that's broadly. And then I would say ICBM specifically, you're right. So where the crew members live and work, there were a lot of things that were just left to neglect because we had won the Cold War. We weren't going to use that stuff. So they kind of fell into disrepair as well. But now, as you all have seen, there is a renewed sense of mission and purpose, especially in ICBMs, because of our adversaries and because of them building up their number of weapons and their capabilities. There is a renewed sense of purpose. And if you get a chance to see missileers, hang out with missileers, or go to the missile wings, you'll feel that. They really have a sense of mission. They're very excited about the new ICBM, about Sentinel coming. They have a lot of job security right now. So they're very excited because change is coming. We've been promising them change is coming for decades, but now they can see it. They can see that there's groundbreakings. They can see, people and companies and the prime contractors are moving in and doing things. So it's a very exciting time to be a missileer. Thank you.
Other question?
There's a couple online. How do you overcome the mental and emotional tolls with the burden of having the macro level understanding of our threat conditions in high risk environments, namely Russia and China, and our global positioning economically, then balance at the micro level and manage your personal and family life?
Holy cow, can you? All right, read that one more time.
Okay, I'll read that one more time.
Yeah.
How do you overcome the mental and emotional tolls with the burden of having the macro level understanding of our threat conditions in high risk environments like Russia and China? And then how do you balance the micro level and manage your personal and family life?
Okay, I'll try and do this. So in my current position, I'm very lucky because I have gotten the opportunity to travel all over this country and hang out at our 3 national labs, hang out at the plants that are building weapons. So Pantex, Kansas City that builds non-nuclear components, Savannah River that does tritium bottles, and then Nevada test site. And of course, I've gotten to come here. So the thing that first of all, I never lose sleep at night. When I hit that pillow, I am gone. So, but I would say the thing that keeps me very optimistic about the state of affairs, even though we see what Russia's doing and what China's doing and what North Korea's doing, even though we see what they're doing, I know what we're doing. And even though we're not going to try to match them in numbers, probably, we're going to be able to match them in terms of capabilities. We have a lot of amazingly talented, brilliant scientists and engineers who are coming up with ways to ensure that our nuclear deterrent is credible and effective. And that is what gives me comfort. We know that in our country right now, there's a lot of supply chain issues. We don't have the trade skills that we need. A lot of our projects in the NNSA are behind because we literally don't have the electricians, carpenters, welders, materials. I mean, it's the same story you guys have all heard. So I know things are going to be late, but I also know we're going to get there. And that's what gives me comfort. And then say the part about my family again.
So how do you manage the macro level balance with your family and personal life?
I'm not sure what that is asking, but I'll say I am not worried about my family. I'm not worried about an adversary and my family because our deterrent is so strong. And I'm not sure if that's what they're asking or if they're asking how do I balance it personally. Personally, like I said, I tell my kids often because they're 13 and 15 years old, they're at the age where you can have very awesome, intelligent conversations with them for the most part until they start acting like 13 and 15-year-olds. But I explain a lot about what I do, where I go, why it's important. One thing I do, especially when I'm on military bases, I forgot to mention this earlier, this is an aside. There's not a lot of females in leadership positions. Coming in the ICBM career field, about 30% of those coming in are women, which is amazing. But then once they have been in about 10 to 15 years, that drops down to about 10%. And then once they get up to me, I'm the only ICBM female general. There's none above me. It's just me. But there's a lot coming. So one of the things I do is I parade my kids around, which of course they hate. But when I go to changes of command or promotion ceremonies, or I went to a ROTC ball recently and I took my 13-year-old, I parade them around because I need people to see that they can do this. Yeah, it's going to be hard sometimes, but you can stay in your career and be successful and do great things for our nation and still have a family. So that is one of the things that I try to do. And I'm not sure if that answered that person's question, but I gave it my best shot.
Another one from online. How do you know when it's okay to put yourself first?
Oof. That's a tough one. I think you never know 100% if it's okay. I'm at the point, I know I'm lucky. I'm at the point where I'm past 20 years in the military. I can retire at any moment. Nobody can stop me. So I know that that's very lucky. So I know if I put myself first and my boss thinks that was the wrong decision and wants to punish me, that's okay. Like it doesn't really matter to me because I can leave. But that's super lucky. And I know y'all aren't in that position where you can just leave if your boss is mad at you. So it's obviously a judgment call. And when I'm deciding if something silly like I'm going to leave work a couple hours early because I want to pick my kid up from school for once, that's a judgment call. What is going on that day? What does my boss have going on? What do I owe people? Am I caught up on everything? If I leave, is my exec still going to be here working her butt off for another 5 hours? Like I think about all of those things before I decide what to do. But again, I try and balance that. Like there are days and weeks, where I'm gone constantly or where I'm staying really late. So I don't feel bad on those days where I come in late or I leave early or I'm gone over lunch. I just don't feel bad anymore.
Okay, some more questions from online. What skills do you possess to be one of the few females in management positions?
So I know y'all have heard of imposter syndrome. I have that really bad. A lot of times I don't know why I am still here. It is a constant surprise. When they promote me or send me to my next job, I'm like, oh, they're keeping me around. Awesome. So I'm not sure what those skills are that I have, but I think they're skills that a lot of people have. Or at least I think you would have to ask people who work with me what they think my skills are. It's hard for me to say, why I think I'm an awesome leader. I think you would have to ask them what, if they even think I'm an awesome leader, why they think I'm an awesome leader. But I would hope that it's authenticity. I mean, it's kind of things I said. I hope that I come off as real. One of the things that bugs me is when I'm talking to somebody and they think that they have to put on a show or act a certain way, or and it's just gross. I want people to be themselves when they're talking to me. So I hope that I seem like myself when I'm talking to other people. And when I do talk to people, I hope they feel like I think they're really important, because I do. Every person I talk to, I think is amazing. And I'm so excited by people. Like, I think every person I meet, they're fascinating to me. Where they come from and what their family is like and what they do and what their personality is like. I just think it's amazing. So I hope it's a lot of that comes through and why they keep making me a leader. I'm not one of those people that is bound to my decisions and can't change my mind. I am very happy to change my mind when people come and give me different information. I love getting feedback from the people who work for me when they say, that thing you said the other day was really terrible. You shouldn't have said it, or that decision you made was really bad and this is how it affected us. I need that. I know a lot of people say, give me feedback, but they don't actually want feedback. I really enjoy getting feedback, and I also hope that's one of the things that the people I work with can see and feel. So I don't know. I hope it's those things, but I would have to ask them.
We have one last comment and then one last question. The comment is, thank you for sharing your story. After 25 years of being a working mother, I finally feel validated. And the last question is, what tips do you have for turning around a dysfunctional organization?
Oh, man. I've been there. So, obviously it depends on why that organization is dysfunctional to begin with. Sometimes people think it takes a long time for an organization's culture to change, but I've seen it change very quickly. When you put a new leader in place or a new team in place, I've seen cultures change and climate change in an organization in a matter of weeks, because the leadership at the top, the way they act, the way they interact, the things they care about, it trickles down very quickly. And I think we underestimate that. If you have a toxic leader at the top who's micromanaging things, who's unwilling to admit mistakes, who has like horrendously long meetings, you can feel that, and it affects everybody's behavior all the way down. So some of the organizations I've gone into that we've turned around, it's just a matter of the people at the top and the team at the top acting differently, treating each other differently, because then that affects the way they treat all of those below them. Sometimes I've gone into organizations and all I had to do was give people time back, like eliminate meetings. That was incredible. Sometimes it was just reinforcing, like, hey, at this place, you need to care about the people. And it's like, oh, wow, innovative thought. Like, sometimes it's just simple things like that. Like, I know the mission's important, but if you don't care about the people, the mission is going to literally fall apart. So care about the people. So obviously it all depends on the organization. It all depends on what's going wrong, but you can change it very quickly. And I think sometimes people get overwhelmed by this is too much, it's too hard, it's too dysfunctional, there's nothing that can be done. That is so wrong. You can do something at every level. You can affect change in that organization just by you doing better and showing other people and treating other people differently and prioritizing things that are better for the people that you work with and who work for you.
Anybody else?
Whew.
Then one more comment. because a lot of the people in my organization immediately reached out to find out more about you as soon as you were there to find out about them and what they did. They came across with, number one, she was so genuinely interested in what I do. So you were spot on in labeling your primary strength as a leader. And with that, I'm going to hand it to my leader.
I don't know if we're going to get feedback, so I'm going to keep a little bit of distance between our microphones. But Stacy, thank you so much. Gosh, so a little bit of feedback for you. You hit the mark, square on target for what we were looking for. So most everyone in here has experienced, the AAT talk in the past. So we are trying to get after kind of the soft skills and develop our workforce and provide different perspectives on some of those soft skills. And you nailed it. So what I would challenge everybody in the workforce and those that are dialed in on Teams as well is take one or two of the nuggets that Stacy provided with us today. I took some notes down in my notebook, but carry it forward. Think about it tonight over dinner, or talk about it with your spouse, with your kids. Whether it's making it a point to share your story, I think that's incredible. There is certainly vulnerability tied to that she really brought out, and that just brings out another point she made with the authenticity piece, or maybe it's the grace and showing yourself some grace. But just tremendous nuggets that you shared with us. I'm grateful, really appreciate it. And again, that's exactly what we're trying to get after with our workforce. So I want to share with you our command coin of excellence, just to say thank you for your time and investment in our workforce and our leader development. So then I've got one more administrative comment, but I want to shake your hand. Thank you. Yeah. Round of applause, please. Okay, so the administrative comment, and this is where I need feedback from everybody in the workforce, and that is, we are in the next 30 days, the leadership, Garrison Commander, Test Center Commander, Josie, who's kind of helped us run this program, the tech director from WISTIC. We are going to shape the next year of the T-Talks and what that looks like. So we are going to continue to stick with the soft skills, but we're also looking at incorporating some of the technologies and technical skills that are starting to emerge, be it hypersonics, artificial intelligence, the direction we're headed. If you recall the last town hall, I actually shared with you kind of an intel perspective, having spent 2 weeks in Eastern Europe. So maybe things like that. The ask from everybody in the workforce is provide us feedback, because again, the next 30 days, we are going to shape the next 6 T-Talk sessions. Once we identify a subject, we are going to reach out and try to bring in the subject matter expert on that topic to bring to White Sands to develop our workforce. And we want to make sure we continue to hit the target with what is of interest to you all. So please, you can send a note direct to me, to the commanders, to Josie, or to Tristan Gilbert as we shape this thing. But we're going to slow down the frequency. We're going to go about every other month. You're going to see T-Talks, but we want to provide some predictability to you as well. So we will schedule those out for the next year so you can put them on your calendar, protect that time. But again, give us some feedback so we can help shape it in the direction that's going to be more meaningful to you all. But again, Stacy, thank you so much. It was a great session. I personally learned a lot, and I wish you safe travels going to Albuquerque later today. So thank you.